It started with a hike I hadn't planned. I was supposed to be visiting my sister that weekend, but a last-minute cancellation left me with a tank full of gas and nowhere to go, so I drove. No GPS, no map, just pointed my car north and let the roads choose for me. By early afternoon, I found myself in a patch of old-growth forest with trails so overgrown they looked forgotten by time. About an hour in, I stopped to tie my boot. That's when I saw it half buried beneath a tangle of moss and pine needles. A leather-bound diary, water-stained and swollen with damp. I almost didn't pick it up, but something about it felt deliberate, like it had been placed there, waiting. The first page was intact. The ink hadn't faded. It read, July 12th, a man in his 30s, hiking alone, finds this book just past the crooked birch near the stone ridge. He has no idea what he's just done. I froze, because that was me. I looked up. There it was, a crooked birch leaning sideways like a snapped bone, right next to a ridge of moss-covered stone. I flipped to the next page. It described what I'd be thinking. He will convince himself it as a prank, a coincidence. But he'll keep reading, and I did, of course I did. Even as my stomach twisted and the hairs on my arms rose like static, I couldn't stop. I sat right there in the dirt, flipping page after page until I saw something that made my breath catch. He doesn't know it yet, but he has just 3 days left to live. I slammed the book shut. The woods had gone silent. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the diary on the motel nightstand, half expecting it to move on its own. It didn't, but my mind wouldn't shut off. Every creak in the walls, every groan of the old pipes made me flinch. The phrase 3 days left to live kept circling in my head like a predator waiting to pounce. By morning, I had convinced myself to throw it away. I dropped it in a dumpster behind a gas station, drove an hour out of town, and found another trail anything to clear my head. But as I wandered deeper into the forest, something felt wrong. Too quiet, no birds, no wind, just stillness. And then I saw it. The diary lying open on a flat rock in the middle of the path. My heart stopped. I hadn't turned the page before throwing it away, but now the left side was stained with something that looked like blood. The right side held a new entry. He throws it away, but it returns. He begins to understand that this is not a warning, it is a script. I stumbled backward. For the rest of the day, I tried to ignore it, but the predictions kept coming true. The flat tire on my car described to the hour, the power outage at the motel down to the minute. By nightfall, I was unraveling. I flipped forward, searching for answers, but most of the later pages were blank. Then I saw one more line. He thinks the book is telling the future, but it's not. I read it over and over, trying to understand. If it wasn't telling the future, then what was it doing? Then I noticed something I hadn't before. The ink was still wet. The next morning, I ran, left the motel before sunrise, tossed the diary into a river this time, watched it sink beneath the current, swallowed whole by muddy water. I didn't stop moving. Dirt roads, unfamiliar highways, whatever kept me from thinking. But by noon, I found myself back in the forest. I didn't even remember turning off the road. It was like I'd been guided there, some invisible thread tugging at my spine. I parked by a rusty gate, walked through a gap in the fence, and there it was, a cabin. It hadn't been there before. I would have remembered leaning to one side, half swallowed by vines, its windows blacked out as if it had eyes and didn't want to see. It matched the drawing I'd seen days earlier in the diary, right down to the broken antler nailed above the door. I didn't want to go in, but I did. The floor creaked beneath my boots. Dust hung in the air like fog. The furniture was old, rotted. Animal bones in the fireplace. And on the table, waiting like it had been expecting me, was the diary, open to a new page. He enters the cabin. He thinks he still has time. But this place was always meant for the ending. My breath caught in my throat. I flipped the page. There was a new entry. Today's date, my name, and one sentence beneath it. He is not alone. Something moved in the back room, slow, deliberate. A shadow taller than a man, dragging its limbs across the floorboards like it didn't remember how to walk. I turned to run, but the front door was gone. Just wall. Like it had never been there at all. I don't remember escaping the cabin. One moment, I was clawing at the wooden wall where the door had been, fingernails splintering, lungs burning. The next, I was outside, sprawled on the cold ground, the diary clutched to my chest like a lifeline. No blood, no scratches. But my mind felt torn. I should have left it behind. But it was like it wanted to stay with me, like it needed me to finish it. That night, I made a decision. I drove out into the middle of nowhere, a clearing behind an old service road, poured lighter fluid over the diary, struck a match, and watched the flames lick around it. But the pages didn't curl. The fire danced and roared, swallowing everything around it, but the diary remained untouched in the center, its cover blackened but intact. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was warm, breathing. The pages began turning on their own, by one, each with a new line written in ink I hadn't seen before. He tries to destroy it. He realizes it cannot be destroyed. He begins to understand it is not writing itself. I blinked. That last one stopped me cold. He begins to understand. He is writing it. The pen in my glove compartment. I hadn't noticed it was missing. I turned the last page. There was my handwriting, shaky, uneven, but unmistakably mine. And beneath it, a line that hadn't been there a second ago. He will return to the cabin tomorrow. My hand trembled. The pen was in my jacket now. I never put it there. The diary wasn't predicting my death. It was trapping me inside the story I was writing. I didn't drive back to the cabin, not willingly. Something took over, like my body moved without permission, like my thoughts were no longer mine. I watched the road blur past the windshield, the trees growing denser, darker. When I finally stopped, I was right back where I started. At the cricked birch, the stone ridge, the trail that wasn't on any map. The cabin waited at the end of it, exactly the same. But worse. Its wood seemed more decayed, the shadows inside thicker, alive. I stepped through the threshold, and the diary was already open on the floor, its pages fluttering in an unseen wind. It was waiting for me. The final page had one sentence. July 15th, he dies alone. Today's date. I stared at it, then looked closer. Underneath the last line, new words were being etched into the page. Slowly, deliberately, I watched the letters form one by one. But not yet. I flipped back through the earlier entries. They'd changed too. Details I hadn't remembered writing were now their dialogue, feelings, exact movements. Whole moments I never lived were now documented like memory. And every one of them was signed at the bottom, me. I was writing my own story, but only after I lived it. Or maybe because I lived it. That's when I realized the twist. I hadn't found the diary. It had found me. Or maybe I made it. The cabin grew cold behind me. A floorboard creaked. I turned around, expecting the shadow, but there was nothing. Just the pen lying on the table and the final blank page. I sat down, my hand moving before I could stop it, and I began to write July 15th. I returned to the cabin one last time. Me.